Exactly.
Perfect. Well, it looks like we are started. And so what we're going to do, Chris, is we're going to hang out until it looks like we've got most of the participants we anticipate logged into this. And as we know, in the era of Zoom, as we've experienced these last 2 years, which is crazy to think, 2 years now, you'd think we'd all be good with Zoom, but I'm still bad. That's just being honest. But while we wait, we're going to give it about 2 minutes here, or 3 minutes, just to make sure everyone's logged in. Chris, are you a football fan?
Oh, you asked the wrong question. I mean, I watch the Super Bowl, the commercials. So in full transparency, I am 100% baseball, 100%. I have no room in my heart for anything else.
I can appreciate, and the only reason I bring it up is because we finally had the Rams beat Tom Brady this weekend. And I know sometimes that's a big deal for us out here.
You gotta be careful though. You're talking to a national audience, right?
I understand that. That's why I was hoping to get a little bit of banter back and forth with that. I thought we'd get something from you, but sometimes you just never know. And I think,
well, here I have a deep appreciation for football, of course, and Tom Brady actually was married in a Catholic church in Santa Monica, and a good friend of mine, the priest at St. Monica, has for the last several years been invited to the Super Bowl to attend with Tom's family. And so I'm sad for him that, this year he's not going to have that privilege.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough life to lead. It sounds like, always getting invited to the Super Bowl for getting married. But anyways, I appreciate it. Again, storytelling. That's
storytelling.
That's what we're talking about here today. Completely unsolicited right there. But it is 11:02, so I figured it's a good time. It's as good as time as any to get things started. And we're also getting some folks in the chat too. That's who married someone else's wife in this audience, Chris. So look at that. You're very topical at this point. It's making a lot of sense already. I think we can end the webinar here, and you've already been effective. But here's what we're going to do for all those on the line today. We are recording this. We do have Chris Looney here with CCS Fundraising. He's going to walk us through just what it means to be good at storytelling and how that really will help folks raise money. Before we do that, I'd just like to introduce not only Chris, but ourselves here at Beacon Point. Again, we like to do a lot of these institutional insight webinars to try to provide a little extra value to a lot of our endowment, foundation, nonprofit clients in an era where there's a lot going on. We just want to make sure that you're fully taken care of from every angle that you can think of. And of course, one of the largest angles is fundraising. And that's why we like to go out and use some of our preferred partners, some of the best. And that is why for these moments, we bring in folks like Chris Looney. Now, Chris, you've got what now is about 23 years of fundraising experience. You are one of the principals and directors, managing directors over with CCS. You work with, I don't know, at this point, I would say over dozens, probably hundreds of clients on the West Coast. You work with a number of our clients. You've done some fantastic stuff that I can personally speak to with a lot of our clients. And also with that, what I'd like to do is throughout we're going to try to make this as conversational as possible. But if there are any questions from any of the folks that are on this webinar, feel free to either A, leave them in the chat, or B, email them to me, and I will make sure that if we can't address the question during this webinar, we will be able to answer it after the fact, because sometimes we know they are, personal questions or they're more tailored to the needs of your organization. And so to do that, I've got Robin from my group. If you don't mind dropping my email into the chat, my email is mhughes, Hughes. And so M is in monkey, but as you can also see in my name, Mitch, at Beacon Pointe. Beacon Pointe is BeaconPointe.com. And again, that's there in the chat. So as questions do come up, please feel free to email them to me. I'm going to be watching my inbox here to make sure that we get everything answered. And again, if it's not, we will reach out after the fact. So with that, Chris, please take us through what is fantastic storytelling and how does it apply for fundraising?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mitch. And good morning or afternoon to everyone that's joining this webinar today. I don't have a ton of time to communicate such an important topic But the good news is that I'm gonna keep it brief, keep it focused, and keep it effective, like you would hope to accomplish through really fantastic storytelling, as you see is the title of this webinar. First, I wanted to thank you, Mitch, and Robin, and Beacon Point Advisors for the invitation. The firm has been one that I've referred clients to now for over 20 years, which is always surprising to me when I think about it in that context. And so delighted to have the opportunity to share my thoughts on the importance of storytelling in the fundraising realm, and the strategies that you might want to consider to elevate your own organization's storytelling capacity to raise more money. And so grateful that you've joined. Look forward to answering questions that might come up that I answer just because of the content, but I look forward to conversations after the webinar too, if necessary, to explore some of these themes further with you individually. You gave a great introduction, Mitch, so I don't need to go much further. But as you mentioned, it's been about 23 or 24 years, yeah, which is hard to believe. And I've been blessed in that time to lead a really amazing team of development fundraising professionals, largely based in Southern California, but our reach is also Arizona, New Mexico, Southern Nevada. And we work hard every day to sort of make the dreams of our clients become reality through philanthropy. And I think what I'm most excited about is working with extraordinary individuals, many of them who are incredible storytellers, to champion really inspirational causes. And this year is our 75th anniversary, which is amazing and really cool. And our focus is fundraising, as you might understand. And with that, it's a lot of campaigns, a lot of major gift fundraising, a lot of training, a lot of case writing, and trying to figure out everyone's story and the best stories to tell, and how to make people the best possible storytellers. So I'll start off with a short story of my own. And it goes like this. When my daughter was really young, even younger than she is in this picture, probably might have been 1 or 2 years old, I started to feel very unprepared to be the father of a girl. And I also wanted to do everything in my power to increase my daughter's chances of success, despite the enormous barriers girls and women face in our society. And about that time, I discovered Girls Inc. of Orange County, this insanely impactful organization, positively changes the lives of 4,000 girls, kindergarten through 18 years old, each year, by providing year-round, holistic, compensatory, and intentional programming around STEM and financial literacy, sound body image, healthy relationships, and college and career readiness. Great stuff. And the organization is incredibly successful in the work that it does, in inspiring all girls to be strong, smart, and bold. I soon found myself on the board. I was in love with the programs and the people, the success and the impact. I even started a great support group called Dads for Daughters that raises money each year to support literacy and internship programs for girls just like my daughter, who is now 12 and growing up to be the epitome of a Girls Inc. girl, strong, smart, and bold. So if you happen to be the dad of a daughter like me and you'd like to learn more about Girls Inc. or Dads for Daughters, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. So Mitch, what did you think of my story? Were you interested and engaged? Did you learn something new or want to help out in some way as a result?
I did. I mean, Chris, I am looking at this too, and I'm seeing your bow tie, and that's captivating in of itself. But I do think, I love how you shared the starting with the dads for daughters. I didn't realize that was your doing. That's pretty neat. That is an awesome. Now I'm dads of sons, so I don't know if that's an area that I can help out. But I also noticed you said, hey, reach out. If there's something that you're interested in, it's a little bit of a call to action. Was that? I feel as if that was a little intentional right now.
Yeah, you bet. It definitely was intentional. And I think that call to action is essential in good storytelling in the fundraising perspective, right? To result in engagement, to result in people taking that next step to learn more, or to give, or to volunteer. So I think what I was also trying to accomplish through that story is the necessity of the story to have an identifiable character. And in this case, selfishly, it was me and it was my daughter. So you'll have to excuse me for that. But having those identifiable characters at the top really helps make the concepts less abstract and more real. So you kind of felt like, hey, oh, that girl's so cute. We want her to succeed. Oh, I understand that these programs can help accomplish that. And oh yeah, we should support an organization that's already doing great work and has a proven model, right? So let's dig into these things a little bit further. And I just wanted to share some language that I found that really helps, I think, cement in my mind at least how to think about storytelling in the nonprofit fundraising sense. And I'll just read it because it's important for all of us to internalize this. Nonprofit storytelling can be a powerful tool to attract and motivate donors. A story can spur someone to take action because suddenly the cause is more than just an abstract idea. It's a real situation affecting real people. Because of the identifiable victim effect, when you put faces to those being impacted rather than referring to general people groups, supporters can form genuine connections with your cause and be more willing to help. A deep emotional connection is a strong motivator to not only donate, but to become the ultimate champion for an organization, a loyal donor, fundraiser, and lifetime supporter. So I just felt like that really summarized up what we need to try to accomplish in storytelling as a fundraising entity, okay? And I think what we need to take our cues from are those storytellers who have always been there to tell us some of the best stories we've ever heard. And there's probably no better storyteller in the world than Disney. And they have just such a successful formula. So, for example, we know in the world of Disney stories that we're introduced to the world. Then we meet the main character. And then we understand what the problem is that the character faces. And I know you're all thinking about Lion King right now as we go through it, right? And that moment where he runs off after Scar kills his father, right? And then there's a problem that clearly seems to be insurmountable, but yet the hero returns, accepts the challenge, and then returns and becomes the hero of the event. And I think you can all think now about how this formula sounds so much like Lion King or Brave or Cinderella. The list goes on and on. Well, in nonprofit fundraising, there is also a formula that we attempt to follow. And there's probably no better nonprofit in the world at telling great stories that motivate us to action, like St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And I'm a little bit biased because my wife has worked for St. Jude for 18 years, but they are absolutely masterful at humanizing the need and inspiring us to take action with hope of real solutions.
Now, it's interesting, Chris, you're bringing in St. Jude, and you just sat here and we discussed it, talking a little bit, I think, in length about, hey, let's personalize the story, right? You want to make it, I think, more about the individual that's able to tell the story. You used your example of Dads for Daughters, or the one where Simba goes after Scar, right? That's an individual example. When I think about St. Jude's, now I agree, the communication's fantastic. Do you think with them, though, are they actually trying to tell the story of what they're doing for the broad research or the broad hospital? Or do you think folks are more interested in the particular persons that are going through St. Jude's? It seems you've got a huge organization. Interesting to think about that. And then now you're going to try to say that the formula is actually to talk more about the individual. I'm curious about this. And I'm sure you're about to explain that to us here in a second.
Yeah. It's a great question. I think it's interesting. Are people more drawn to the stories? Is that what they're responding to? Or is it the actual work, the impact, the saving lives piece that they're more attracted to? The patient care. So what is it? And I think people are drawn to all three. I think all three are incredibly important elements that if you sacrifice one, you sacrifice a major component of what motivates and engages people. It's not just the person or the humanizing story. It also has to include impact as well, and inspiration. So as you can see on this slide, it is important to have a great lead character that the audience can get behind and love. But the main character, as we found in the Disney story, does have to have conflict as well. You can't just say, here's this person, their life is perfect, and have that be motivating. There has to be some conflict present, some barrier, some obstacle that needs to be overcome. And it's very easy to figure this out in the case of St. Jude, because the patient wants to live, but is challenged with a terrible disease that's threatening their life through no fault of their own. So you immediately have a heart that goes out to them. I challenge the organization that you represent or that you volunteer with or work at to think about what the unique challenge is to your clients and what your problem you're trying to solve for, because it's going to be different. And clearly it's easier to create the emotional response when you're talking about sick kids. I get that. But you have to figure out how you can create the emotional response for the clients and so the community that you do serve. And that is a major obstacle that very few spend time trying to figure out. And that's where I think you can win major points. And in the case, going back to St. Jude, beyond the character, then in the problem, in rides the hero, St. Jude, the organization that's stepping forward to provide the life-saving treatment and a place to receive that treatment at no cost to the patient or their family. Yay, something to celebrate. And when then we're introduced to the fact that, wait for it, our main character is not alone, there's many, many, many more children out there that are suffering from the same disease or diseases like that, and other lives being threatened, and St. Jude can help. The hospital needs our help. Whew, with your help, St. Jude can reach and help more patients. Won't you consider that making a gift? That's just magic, right? It's hard to say no to that successful storytelling formula.
And I think
so stories like these.
I'd
Yeah,
love
go
to
ahead.
ask too, beyond that, creating that tension. I think you're right, right? That initial heartthrob of, okay, here's how we can captivate the audience. Can you talk a little bit too about how this formula that we're discussing right now can also be long-term in nature? So it's not just that initial heartthrob, but how it's one of those that it develops over time and you're able to continuously get more support, right? How does this formula also make sense for that?
Yeah, this formula in many ways is similar to the longer form case for support documents that we might create for a variety of special fundraising initiatives. Famously, the campaigns that we run, the case for support has to similarly focus on the stories of individuals that are benefiting from, facing a problem and then benefiting from the successful programs of an organization, resulting in some major impact. So I think, when you focus on the longer term, let's say your horizon is 5, 10, 50 years, you want to focus on the bigger problem, the bigger impact, and the longer term perspective that you would necessarily need to take. The formula doesn't change, the dollars change. Right? So instead of talking about, in this situation, will you give $19.95 per month and be an angel for St. Jude, you're talking then about, we need to raise millions of dollars in order to eradicate this or solve that. So the impact becomes larger than one person or a small group, but it's bigger and requires bigger dollars. And then the ask is bigger as well. So you just magnify this formula to a much bigger perspective, but everything stays the same. And the stories with real people absolutely make the work human. They give the power to you to connect emotionally and to help unite the work with your prospective donors. And we're very fortunate in that most nonprofits have a huge wealth of stories to share, but just often fail to collect them and use them appropriately. So one of my first recommendations to nonprofits is to work diligently to collect all the very best stories of successes you can find from patients, clients, volunteers, board members, donors, and others to really build that arsenal of stories you can use in all of your channels of communication, annual reports, newsletters, YouTube channels, website, at your galas. Tell these stories as opposed to telling people about your mission. Tell about the mission through the stories and begin to tell the kind of stories and in the ways of this formula. I think the result will be stronger in terms of the emotional appeal and the response from a fundraising perspective. It makes sense to you, Mitch?
It does. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it, what if I'm not a good storyteller though? Like, let's just say I've got, I'm a part of this nonprofit. This nonprofit will continue to do Girls Inc., right? Wonderful stories. There are some amazing things that happen with it. I'm not a good storyteller. What do I do now with that?
Yeah, I think that is such a good question because I'm sure a lot of us feel deficiencies in storytelling. My personal opinion is that you don't have to be a great raconteur to be able to tell the nonprofit's story effectively. I think the challenge in what limits a lot of people is that the nonprofit hasn't developed the story well enough to give comfort to the individual, to allow the individual to even just memorize that story and share it repeatedly. And what I also know is that the first time you tell a story, or the first couple of times you tell a story, it's probably not going to be as strong as it will be the 20th or 30th time you've shared it. And we think about the stories that we tell people, and our spouses who say, "Oh my God, you're not going to tell that story again, are you?" Well, those stories get better all the time. You start adding in little, more exciting details and more colorful, but you got to practice it. So nobody's going to be a good storyteller initially. You need to have the story, and you need to practice it to become a good story. So having that pre-built story is important. And I would encourage all of your nonprofits to spend the time developing 3 or 4 sample stories that volunteers and staff members can begin to share with prospective donors or people they meet. And this is what so many volunteers ask for all the time. Can I just have the elevator pitch? Can I just, this is what they mean. They want the story, right? They want that kind of story that I shared with you about Girls Inc. early on, that elevator pitch. And oftentimes they just don't know who the main character should be. They don't know how to talk about their struggle. They don't know how to talk about how the organization helped them overcome that barrier and how you can create the call to action. So create that for them and allow them to practice that. So it would be a major way to, I think, enhance people's ability to become much stronger storytellers in the future. So let me just share these quick takeaways with you. But before I do, I think it's also important for individuals to also think a little bit strategically about the story that they also want to tell about their own involvement and engagement with an organization. Because I often find that after you've talked about the story that gets them excited, then they're going to want to know more about your walk or your role or your relationship with the organization. So the next story you're probably going to tell is about why you're involved, why you're so excited and enthusiastic and supportive of this organization. So, you should think about questions like, how did I get involved? Why did I get involved? Why do I continue to support this organization? What does this organization do that I'm most proud of? What's my favorite story of success that I've experienced with this organization? And how can a person who's interested learn more about the organization if I've done a good job about inspiring them to action? So those are some great questions to explore on your own or as a volunteer, so you can be prepared to continue the conversation with someone post initial storytelling with the main character where the focus is on you. So we have to remember, given all I've said, that importantly in fundraising, people give to people first. So when we think about that, people give to people. People give to the story of a great character, right? A person there. And people give to us, the individuals that are the sort of soldiers to an organization that are taking the message out, okay? So with all we've discussed today, let me leave you with these 3 takeaways. 1, successful fundraising efforts require effective storytelling, right? And this means creating powerful narratives. You have to spend the time to create those powerful narratives. Number 2, the future of successful fundraising requires 2 things. 1, following those age-old methods of storytelling that we reviewed today, but then also marrying that with the new vehicles and approaches to tell those stories. Like, for example, the advent of video is here. If you're not telling your stories via video, via YouTube, and are restricted still to print platforms, mail and brochure, et cetera, then you're missing the boat entirely. So that's what I would say, Mitch, and that's what I would leave everybody with today.
No, Chris, and I appreciate that. I know we're up on 11:30, and I wanted to make sure we had some time for the questions that came through. I two things that I really wanted to ask you about as you were talking about this, and you mentioned it a little bit, but you said people give to people, right? And so you know, having the ability to tell a story, but really, you know, tell a little bit more about the tension or the impact that you have. I think that's important. Can you just elaborate a little bit more? I think when you've worked with us on some clients who have $1 million campaigns, some who have $50 million, $100 million campaigns. Does that still ring true regardless the size? If I want to raise $1 million or if I want to raise 50 million, are people still giving to people? You know, how does that look for you? I think that's the first question. And then I got one more that I'll hit you after that.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely the case. When we run these enormously large campaigns, there are some outlier gifts that come in that are inexplicable, sometimes very large gifts. Like, where did that come from? You know, and we celebrate that because we love big wins and surprises like that. But more often than not, 90+% of the money that we raise is done with strategy and intention, and it's one or more people representing the organization who go out proactively and engage a prospective donor in a very serious conversation about what could be accomplished through their support. And if you don't have the right people connecting with those prospective donors, you know, a very inspiring leader, a peer, someone who's already made a big gift, those kinds of things, you know, you're probably not going to win as often as you will when you put the right people together.
And that goes beyond just your staff, right? You're talking about board members. You're talking about volunteers. It's making sure everyone's aligned with your story, right?
CCS, you know, while we can be on the front lines, we can sit with the chief executive officer or the development director to make an ask, and it can be effective. We'd much prefer to train up and put the CEO and the board member together to make a $5 or $10 million ask of a prospective donor, because if they do it well, not only will it encourage them to do that again in the future, but it will also strengthen, I think, the relationship that exists between those leaders and the donor as well for many future gifts. So it's the better formula.
That's helpful. And the last question I've got for you too, you mentioned at the very end, power of video. We had, I think about a year ago, in fact, right in the middle of all of this, learning how to be on Zoom, we had one of our partners come in who's more on the media side doing videos. And they said to the tune of, on your website landing page, having a 1-minute video telling your story increased not only repetition on pages on the page being visited, but also an increase in donations. Have you seen that at all? Does that work? I'm talking about videographers here telling us something like that, but even having a minute storytelling video on your homepage of your website driving engagement, would that be something you'd even think about suggesting as well?
Absolutely. And it's not just one video. You're probably talking about a handful of videos that you can switch in and out so that your website becomes more of a dynamic, living and breathing
interactive
asset of the organization. And a lot of the organizations we're working with kind of consider the website to be so archaic. Most of them now have their own apps. And the app is a mechanism for new video to be posted, calendars to be regularly updated with activities and events, for volunteers to be able to sign up for their own times to come in and help out. You know, so there's just a revolution.
In the era of social media, I mean, I think, Chris, what we're doing is lining up our next webinar here, because we're a few minutes over, but no, I agree with you. And I think it'll be very interesting to continue to see how we can try to craft these stories and work with clients in doing that. But again, I know we're a little bit over in time, Chris. I wanted to say thank you so much for, again, taking 30 minutes out of your day to share that with us. Chris is one of our preferred partners. If anyone has any questions or wants to talk to him further, or even needs help in strategizing around what that story may even look like to be effective, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Chris. Here is his contact information: clooney@ccsfundraising.com. If we log off and you didn't have access to that, please feel free to reach out to myself at mhughes@beaconpointe.com, and I'll make sure to get all of your questions answered. All connections are important to us and important to Chris, I know. But Chris, again, thank you so much to you and your team for taking your time.
It's been fun. Thanks, Mitch. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.